The cantina was dark and quiet. Most of the lights were broken or turned off. Only a few aliens sat at the old metal tables, drinking and trying to forget their problems. The air smelled like cheap alcohol and engine oil from the docking bay, next door. Commander Zekthara sat alone in the corner. His blue skin looked pale under the dim lights. 6 arms rested on the table, but they would not stop shaking. He held a glass of strong drink with 2 hands, but the liquid still moved from his trembling. This was his 4th glass tonight, maybe his 5th. He had stopped counting. Once Zekthara had been the pride of the Valyrian Empire. He wore 17 medals on his chest. Each one told a story of victory in battle. He had fought in 3 different parts of the galaxy. Other soldiers looked up to him. Young officers wanted to be like him. Enemies feared his name. Now he jumped when ships landed at the station. He could not sleep without pills. He saw things that were not there. His hands shook all the time. The great commander Zekthara was broken. Dr. Miraval walked into the cantina, slowly. She was a tall alien with gray skin and 4 eyes. She had been helping soldiers with their problems for many years. She had seen warriors who could not fight anymore. She had helped those who saw too much death. But she had never seen someone like Zekthara. She sat down across from him. He did not look up from his glass. "You missed our appointment today," she said softly. Zekthara laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Appointments, schedules, none of it matters anymore, Doctor. It matters to me, and it should matter to you." He finally looked at her. His eyes were red and tired. "Do you know what I did before I came here? I led the attack on the Kristen Rebellion. 50,000 enemy soldiers surrendered when they saw my ship. I never lost a battle in 20 years. I know your record, Commander. That's why I want to help you." Zekthara took another drink. The alcohol burned his throat, but he did not care. "You want to help me? Then tell me how to forget. Tell me how to stop seeing their faces." "Whose faces?" "The humans." The word came, out like poison. The cursed, insane humans. Dr. Miraval had heard this before. Every session Zekthara talked about humans. She had read his file. She knew about the battle at Kepler 442. She knew about the Valyrian Third Fleet. But she did not know the whole story. No one did, except the soldiers who were there. "Tell me about them," she said. Zekthara laughed again. "You want to hear about monsters? About creatures that should not exist? Fine. I will tell you about humans." He finished his drink and called for another. The bartender, a short alien with 1 eye, brought him a full bottle. Zekthara poured a glass and drank half of it at once. 18 months ago, I was the 2nd officer on the dreadnought Eternal Glory. Fleet Admiral Vormak was in command. We had 300 ships, the best ships in the galaxy, the strongest weapons, the most skilled soldiers. "Where were you going?" "To a small system called Kepler 442. The humans had built colonies there, mining stations, nothing important. It should have been easy." Zekthara's hands shook more as he talked. The humans had just learned to travel between stars. They were new. Weak. Their ships were made of simple metal. Their weapons were basic. We had reports that said they still used chemical rockets and metal bullets. "So you expected an easy victory?" "Easy?" Zekthara laughed so hard that other customers looked at him. "We expected them to surrender before we even reached their planet. That's what every other species does. They see our ships, they count our weapons, they do the math. Then they give up." Dr. Miraval leaned forward. "But the humans didn't surrender." "No." Zekthara's voice became quiet. "They did not surrender. They did something else. Something that still keeps me awake at night." The cantina seemed to get even quieter. Even the music from the speakers had stopped. Zekthara stared at his glass like he could see the past in the liquid. Admiral Vormak was so confident. He wore his best uniform. He practiced his speech, the same speech he gave to every new world we conquered. He would tell them about the glory of joining the Valyrian Empire, about how we would protect them, and give them technology about how fighting would only bring death. What happened when you reached their system? We came out of hyperspace in perfect formation, 300 ships in battle order. Our dreadnoughts were huge compared to their little ships. We must have looked like gods to them. Zekthara poured another drink. His hands shook so much that some of the alcohol spilled on the table. Their defense fleet was waiting for us. 12 ships, 12 tiny ships against our 300. They were converted mining vessels and cargo haulers. We could have destroyed them all with one salvo from our main guns. Why didn't you? Because Admiral Vormak wanted to give them a chance to surrender. He opened communications. He gave his speech. He told them about the power of the Valerian Empire. He showed them our weapons. He explained that resistance was useless. Zekthara stopped talking. He just sat there staring at nothing. Dr. Miraval waited. She had learned that pushing him too hard would make him stop talking completely. The human commander answered. Zekthara finally said. His name was Jake Morrison. I will never forget his voice. He spoke like he was not afraid at all. Like he was talking to an equal, not to the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. What did he say? He said. Zekthara's voice cracked. He said that they would not surrender, that they would not back down, that if we wanted their worlds, we would have to take them over their dead bodies. That made Admiral Vormak angry? No. He laughed. We all laughed. 12 ships against 300. It was like an insect threatening to fight a starship. But then Morrison said something else, something that made the laughter stop. Dr. Miraval waited. He said, Admiral, you came here to make us slaves, but we're not any other species you've met before. We're humans. And humans don't kneel to anyone. Zekthara finished his drink and looked at Dr. Miraval. His eyes were full of pain and fear. That's when I knew we had made a terrible mistake. We were not fighting another civilized species. We were fighting something completely different. Something that scared me more than any enemy I had ever faced. What did you do? We prepared for battle. But nothing could have prepared us for what the humans did next. Nothing in the galaxy could have prepared us for that. Dr. Miraval ordered a drink for herself. She could see that Zekthara needed time to calm down before he could continue his story. His hands were shaking worse now. Sweat ran down his blue face, even though the cantina was cold. Take your time, Commander, she said gently. Zekthara nodded and tried to steady his breathing. After a few minutes, he began to speak again. The human colony was called New Denver. It was built on a moon around a gas giant. Just a mining operation with about 50,000 people living there, nothing special. We had conquered planets with billions of people and better weapons. He paused to drink more alcohol. Admiral Vormak ordered the fleet to move closer. Standard battle formation. Our dreadnoughts in front, cruisers in the middle, fighters ready to launch. We had done this hundreds of times before. How did the humans respond? That's when we saw something strange. Their 12 ships started moving toward us, not away from us, toward us. At first, we thought they were coming to surrender. Maybe they wanted to negotiate. Zekthara laughed bitterly. We were so wrong. So very wrong. What were they really doing? They were preparing to attack. But not like any attack we had ever seen. Captain Morrison's ship was in the lead. It was an old mining vessel called the Denver's Pride. It had been converted for fighting, but it still looked like a cargo hauler with guns stuck on it. Zekthara rubbed his temples with two of his hands. The memory was clearly painful. Our sensors showed that the human ships were accelerating at maximum speed. They were coming straight at us, no fancy maneuvers, no attempt to use cover, just a direct charge toward our battle line. That seems like suicide. That's what we thought. Admiral Vormak called it primitive stupidity. He said the humans didn't understand modern space warfare. He ordered our gunners to target their lead ship as a warning shot. Dr. Miraval leaned forward. What happened? The warning shot hit Morrison's ship directly. It blew a hole in his hull the size of a small building. Any civilized species would have stopped the attack right there. They would have tried to save their ship and crew. They would have retreated. But the humans didn't retreat. No, they kept coming. Morrison's ship was leaking air and burning, but it kept accelerating toward us. Then we heard his voice on the radio again. He was laughing, actually laughing while his ship was dying around him. Zekthara's voice became very quiet. He said, "Nice shot, Admiral. Our turn now." What did he mean? We found out 30 seconds later. Morrison's ship fired everything it had, not at our dreadnoughts, but at our fighter squadrons. He wasn't trying to win a battle. He was trying to kill as many of us as possible before his ship exploded. Zekthara finished another drink and immediately poured a new one. The other human ships spread out. Each one picked a different target. They weren't following any battle plan we recognized. There was no coordination, no strategy, just pure aggression. How did your forces respond? Admiral Vormak was confused. This wasn't how space battles worked. Civilized species used long-range weapons. They kept their distance. They tried to disable enemy ships, not destroy them completely. But the humans were different. Completely different. Captain Lisa Park commanded a converted freighter called the Iron Will. Our sensors showed that her cargo hold was full of nuclear weapons. Not nuclear missiles, just raw nuclear bombs. Dr. Miraval felt a chill. What was she planning to do with those? She was planning to ram our flagship and detonate them all at once. We didn't understand this at first. We thought it was some kind of mistake. No sane commander would sacrifice their ship and crew like that. But she wasn't joking. No. She gave the order to her crew over an open channel so we could hear it. She said, "All hands, this is the captain. We're going to ram the big one in the middle. It's been an honor serving with you all. See you on the other side." Zekthara's hands shook so badly that he could barely hold his glass. Her crew responded by cheering, not crying or begging or trying to escape. They were cheering. They were happy to die as long as they could take us with them. What did Admiral Vormak do? He ordered all weapons to fire on the Iron Will. We hit it with everything we had. Plasma cannons, missile salvos, energy beams, enough firepower to destroy a small city. Did you stop her? No. The ship was burning and falling apart, but it kept coming. Park's voice came over the radio one last time. She said, "Tell Earth we did our job. Tell them New Denver doesn't kneel." Zekthara stopped talking. He just sat there staring at his hands. Dr. Miraval could see tears in his eyes. The Iron Will hit our flagship right in the hangar bay. All those nuclear weapons exploded at once. The explosion was so bright that it blinded our sensors for several minutes. When we could see again, our flagship was broken in half. How many Valerians died? 8,000 crew members, including Admiral Vormak, the most powerful ship in our fleet, destroyed by a converted cargo hauler. Dr. Miraval was shocked. She had never heard of any species using such extreme tactics. But that was just the beginning, Zekthara continued. The other human ships saw what happened and became even more aggressive. It was like watching madness spread through their fleet. What do you mean? Captain Danny Rodriguez was commanding a ship called the Frontier Justice. When he saw the flagship explode, he started laughing over the radio, not the laugh of someone who was happy to be winning, the laugh of someone who had lost their mind. What did he do? He ordered his ship to ram our medical vessels, the ships that were trying to rescue survivors from the flagship. In civilized warfare, medical ships are never attacked. It's against every rule of war. But Rodriguez attacked them anyway. He destroyed 3 medical ships before we could stop him. Thousands of wounded Valerians died because they couldn't get help. Rodriguez's last words were, "This is for every human child who won't grow up because of you." Zekthara poured another drink with shaking hands. By this time, our remaining ships were in complete panic. We had lost our flagship and our medical support. Our soldiers had never seen anything like this. Enemies who fought like they wanted to die. Enemies who cared more about killing us than surviving themselves. How did the battle end? It didn't end. It just got worse. Much worse. Because that's when we realized that the 12 ships were just the beginning. Earth had sent reinforcements. Zekthara looked at Dr. Miraval with eyes full of terror. And the reinforcements were even more insane than the first group. Zekthara was drinking faster now. The bottle was almost empty, but his hand still shook. Dr. Miraval could see that talking about the battle was making him worse. but she needed to hear the rest of the story. "Tell me about the reinforcements," she said softly. Zekthara closed his eyes. The space around New Denver suddenly filled with more human ships. Not 12 this time. 60 ships. All of them bigger than the first group. All of them built for war. These were military vessels? Yes. Real warships. Not converted mining ships or cargo haulers. These were made to kill. And they were commanded by someone who understood exactly how to use them. Who was their commander? Admiral Rick Carter, a human who had been fighting wars his entire life. When his voice came over our communications, it was calm and cold. Not like Morrison, who was angry and desperate. Carter sounded like death itself. Zekthara opened his eyes and looked at Dr. Miraval. Carter spoke to what was left of our fleet. He said, "Valyrian forces, this is Admiral Carter of the Earth Defense Fleet. You have attacked our colony and killed our people. We are here to return the favor." "What did your remaining commanders do?" Commander Telvis had taken charge after Admiral Vormak died. He tried to negotiate. He told Carter that we could discuss terms, that we could find a peaceful solution. Did Carter agree? Carter laughed. But it wasn't like the crazy laughter of the other humans. It was worse. It was the laugh of someone who had already decided that we were all going to die. Zekthara poured the last of the alcohol into his glass. Carter said, "Commander, you came here to make slaves of free people. The time for talking is over. Now, you get to see what happens when humans go to war." What happened next? The human fleet attacked immediately. But their tactics were completely different from the first group. Morrison and his people had fought with desperation and madness. Carter's fleet fought with cold, calculated violence. Dr. Miraval leaned back in her chair. She was beginning to understand why Zekthara was so traumatized. They had learned from watching the first battle. They knew our weaknesses now. They knew how our ships moved, how our weapons worked, how our commanders thought. So they adapted. Their strategy. They did more than adapt. They turned everything we thought we knew about warfare upside down. Captain Susan Hayes led their fighter squadrons. She divided her pilots into small groups and sent them after our capital ships. That should have been suicide for the fighters. It was suicide. But Hayes had ordered her pilots to ram our ships when their fighters were too damaged to keep fighting. Every single pilot followed that order. They turned their fighters into guided missiles. Zekthara's voice cracked. "I watched 20 human fighters attack our cruiser Stellar Might. Our gunners shot down 15 of them. But the other 5 kept coming. They flew their burning fighters directly into our engine compartments and weapon systems." Did the cruiser survive? The Stellar Might was dead in space within minutes. Then Hayes led a boarding party onto the ship. They didn't try to capture it. They came to destroy everything and everyone inside. Dr. Miraval felt sick. "What do you mean?" "Human soldiers broke into our ship wearing armor that looked like metal shells. They carried weapons that fired metal bullets at incredible speed. But the worst part wasn't their weapons. It was how they fought. How did they fight? Like demons. They didn't follow any rules. They used chemical weapons in the ship's air system. They set fires in the crew quarters. They sabotaged our computers and life support systems." Zekthara finished his drink and called for another bottle. The bartender looked worried but brought him more alcohol. General Paul Martinez was leading ground troops on ships that had been forced to land for repairs. His soldiers would attack any Valyrian ship that touched the surface of New Denver's moon. How many ships landed? 12 ships had to land because of damage from the first battle. Martinez's troops attacked all of them at the same time. But they didn't just attack the ships, they attacked the repair crews, the medical teams, even the cooks. They killed non-combat personnel? They killed everyone. Martinez's soldiers didn't seem to understand the difference between soldiers and support staff. To them, we were all enemies, all targets. Dr. Miraval was horrified. That's against every rule of civilized warfare. The humans didn't care about civilized warfare. Colonel Katie Sullivan proved that when she led an attack on our hospital ship. They attacked a hospital ship? Sullivan's troops boarded the Mercy of Stars and killed everyone inside. Doctors, nurses, wounded soldiers, medical robots. Everyone. When our communications officer asked her why, she said, "You forfeited any claim to mercy when you came here to enslave us." Zekthara was crying now. Tears ran down his blue face. But the worst was still coming. Carter had been saving his most experienced troops for the final assault. Captain Neil Brooks commanded a ship called the Vengeance. It was small compared to our dreadnoughts, but it was fast and heavily armed. What made Brooks different from the others? Brooks had fought in human wars before they met us. He understood something that the other humans were just learning. He knew that the best way to break an enemy wasn't just to kill them. It was to make them afraid. What did he do? Brooks targeted our communication arrays, not to destroy them, but to take control of them. He wanted us to hear what was happening to our own ships. Dr. Miraval didn't want to hear more, but she knew Zekthara needed to finish his story. Brooks broadcast the sounds of our ships being destroyed. He made sure every Valerian in the fleet could hear their friends and family members dying. He wanted us to know that there was no escape, no mercy, no hope. How did your fleet respond? We broke. Commander Telvas ordered a full retreat. We had started with 300 ships. By that time, we had less than 100 left. The rest were destroyed or captured. Did Carter let you retreat? No. He followed us. His ships chased us for 3 days, picking off any vessel that fell behind. Brooks personally destroyed 6 more of our ships during the retreat. When did the attack finally stop? Only when we reached the edge of the system. Carter's fleet stopped at the boundary and let the survivors escape. But Brooks sent us a final message. What did he say? He said, "Go home and tell your people what you learned here. Tell them that humans don't forgive and we don't forget. If you come back, we'll be waiting." Zekthara looked at Dr. Miraval with empty eyes. That's when I knew we had made the worst mistake in Valerian history. We hadn't just lost a battle. We had awakened something that should have been left alone. The bartender brought Zekthara another bottle, but this time he also brought a glass of water. Dr. Miraval noticed that other customers had left the cantina. Only she and Zekthara remained in the dark corner. "What happened when you reached Valerian space?" she asked quietly. Zekthara laughed, but there was no humor in it. We thought we were safe. We thought the nightmare was over, but the humans had taught us that safety was just an illusion. The humans followed you home? No, they didn't need to. The damage was already done. Of the 300 ships that left Valerian space, only 47 returned. We lost over 200,000 soldiers and crew members. Dr. Miraval tried to understand the numbers. That's almost 80% of your fleet. Yes, the worst military defeat in Valerian history, but the numbers don't tell the real story. The real story is what those humans did to our minds. Zekthara drank more alcohol, but his hands were steadier now. Talking about the aftermath seemed easier than reliving the battle. When we reached the home fleet, High Command was waiting for us. They wanted to know what happened. How a primitive species had destroyed most of our third fleet. What did you tell them? Commander Telvas tried to explain. He told them about the human tactics, about their willingness to die, about their complete disregard for the rules of civilized warfare. Did the High Command believe him? They thought he was making excuses. Admiral Koltek said that no species could be that different from everyone else in the galaxy. He said that Telvas was weak and had panicked in battle. Zekthara's eyes became distant, so they sent scouts back to human space. Just a few ships to see what the humans were doing, to see if they were preparing for war. What did the scouts find? They found something worse than an army. They found an entire species that had gone insane with rage. Dr. Miraval felt a chill. What do you mean? The humans weren't just building more warships, they were changing their entire civilization for war. Every factory was making weapons. Every school was training soldiers. Every person was preparing to fight. That seems like an extreme response. It was extreme, but it was also terrifying. The scouts reported that human children as young as 10 years old were learning to use weapons. Their elderly people were working in weapon factories. Their entire species had become a military machine. Zekthara poured another drink but didn't touch it immediately. The worst part was what they were building. Not just ships and guns. but weapons that no civilized species would ever create. What kind of weapons? Weapons designed to kill entire planets. Weapons that could destroy star systems. Weapons that could spread disease through space itself. Dr. Miraval was horrified. They were planning to attack other worlds? No. They were planning to defend themselves. But their idea of defense was to have the power to destroy anyone who threatened them. Anyone at all. What did the Valerian High Command do? They tried to pretend it wasn't happening. They classified all reports about humans. They told the survivors of the Third Fleet never to speak about the battle. They acted like humans didn't exist. But you couldn't forget. None of us could forget. I tried to return to normal duty, but I couldn't function. Every time I saw a small ship, I thought of Morrison ramming our flagship. Every time I heard alarms, I remembered Hayes and her suicide fighters. Zekthara finally drank from his glass. The other survivors were the same. Commander Telvas requested transfer to a desk job. He couldn't command ships anymore. Captain Fornell retired early and moved to a farming colony. Lieutenant Hector started drinking and never stopped. What about the families of the soldiers who died? The government lied to them. They said the Third Fleet was lost in a hyperspace accident. They said their loved ones died exploring unknown space, not fighting a war. Why did they lie? Because the truth was too frightening. If the Valerian people knew that somewhere in the galaxy was a species that could destroy our fleets, they would panic. They would demand that we attack humans before humans attacked us. Dr. Miraval leaned forward. But that would mean another war. Yes, a war that we would lose. The scouts reported that human military strength was growing every day. Within a year they would have more ships than the entire Valerian Empire. So the government decided to hide the truth. They decided to pretend that humans were not a threat. But other species in the galaxy were getting the same message. The Krillian. Dominion sent a fleet toward human space 6 months ago. It never returned. Zekthara's voice became very quiet. The Andromedan Collective tried to make contact with humans 3 months ago. They sent diplomats and scientists, not soldiers. The humans destroyed their ships anyway. Why would they attack diplomats? Because humans don't trust anyone anymore. They believe that every alien species is planning to enslave them. They shoot first and ask questions later. Dr. Miraval was beginning to understand the full scope of what had happened. So humans have become hostile to all alien contact. Yes, they patrol their borders with fleets of warships. They attack any alien vessel that comes too close to their territory. They've built weapons that can destroy entire star systems to keep other species away. And all because of one battle. One battle that showed them what the galaxy really thinks of them. Before we attacked, they were curious about meeting other species. They wanted to trade and learn and make friends. Zekthara finished his drink and looked directly at Dr. Miraval. Now they know that the galaxy sees them as potential slaves. So they've decided to make sure that no one can ever threaten them again. What do you think will happen now? I think humans will eventually leave their space and attack other species. Not to conquer them, but to eliminate any possible threat. They'll keep fighting until they're the only species left in the galaxy, or until someone destroys them completely. That's a terrifying thought. It's a terrifying reality. We created the most dangerous enemy the galaxy has ever seen, and we did it by accident just by being ourselves. Zekthara stood up slowly, his 6 arms trembling. The worst part is that we deserved it. We came to their homes to make them slaves. They showed us what happens when you threaten free people. He walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back at Dr. Miraval. Every night, I dream about Captain Morrison's last words. He said humans don't kneel to anyone. I used to think that was just brave talk from a desperate man. And now? Now I know it was a promise that cost us everything. Zekthara left the cantina, disappearing into the darkness of the station corridors. Dr. Miraval sat alone, thinking about everything she had heard. She finally understood why the Valerian government had classified the human files. Some truths were too dangerous to know.